Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Tony Powell's great friend, 1380 AM. He is the host of a great talk show out there, Georgia and South Carolina. Is that correct?
That's right. How are you doing, Tim?
I am doing awesome. Always delighted to have you on the program. You have a new website. What is that new website?
It's ITalkUSA.com.
ITalkUSA.com. It's not Powers to the People. It's ITalkUS.com. You want to check it out. He's got a brand new network in the works. How's that network going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going great. We're building every day.
Awesome. So are you yet launched into other cities, or where are you at in that process?
Yeah, we're actually trying to launch in other cities right now. It's an online network that we're trying to grow to other cities, and we've got some other stations who are ready to take us on the air in their city. So we're hoping to have this thing built out here in a few weeks.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Okay, it's been kind of a slow news week. I'm not sure what there is really to talk about, but I guess we'll give it a shot. Let's see. I reminded people in a recent Price Point edition I just produced about, what this administration has done in the scandal department versus Richard Milhouse Nixon. And the reality is that more than half of all Americans alive today weren't even around when Nixon committed his crimes. In fact, I was, I'm now at the half century mark, and I was 9 when all that broke out. And I could have really cared less when all that was happening. So I just want to give people a quick refresher of the scandals of the Nixon administration. Nixon was paranoid, no question about it. In 1960, he got beat by the narrowest margin, I think, of any presidential candidate in U.S. history, losing by 1 vote per precinct around the country. 1 vote per precinct. And then there was many votes that came out of Chicago and out of East Texas from dead people. Dead people normally don't vote, but they came out in droves in 1960. So he was paranoid that he was going to possibly lose against George McGovern. Later on, he would find out that McGovern would lose by just about the biggest margin of any candidate in history, with or without what is now known as the Watergate break-in. Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C., the home of the Democratic Party, and the DNC in 1972. There was a break-in, and these people went in, checked it out, got information out of there, and and we're going to use it in the campaign. The Nixon administration kept on covering it, distancing themselves from it, and only because, in my opinion, the fact that there was a majority of Democrats in both houses, and frankly, Republicans had grown tired of Nixon not expending any political capital to help them at all. He let them all out to dry on the midterm elections like a moron, which is why he had no help at all. If it had even been one majority in a house, or even a narrow margin in either one of those houses, I don't think an impeachment threat would have even been real. But that wasn't the case. He was going to be toast, and so he resigned in order to avoid impeachment. Now, which one of the scandals would you like to start off with that might be worse than that, my friend Tony?
Well, if you look at Nixon and what happened to Nixon and the similarities, it's almost eerie that, first of all, you had the Watergate break-in that you mentioned in the plumbers unit, and you look at what has happened with the Associated Press. You have the Justice Department going into the Associated Press, and they're getting their phone records to try to find a leak from the White House or from the administration. And so they kind of overreach. They go in there and they get several, well over 100 different private phone numbers from people at the Associated Press. They go in, they get the phone records for 20 phone lines inside the Associated Press. And it's kind of unprecedented, and that's why you're seeing the press all up in arms over that. And I think that's what finally woke the press up. But then you also had Nixon, he was covering something up, and that's what we see in the Benghazi scandal. We see the cover-up is always worse than the crime, and actually I don't think it was a crime committed here. But now the cover-up of what happened in Benghazi for political reasons may come back to haunt him. And then you had one of the articles of impeachment against Nixon was the fact that he was using the IRS as a weapon against his political enemies. He had an enemies list. And we've see the same thing with the Obama administration, the IRS going after Tea Party groups and basically intimidating them, preventing them from being able to raise money. And the similarities are just eerie.
Yeah, except they seem far more profound and far more pronounced in the Obama administration. And you didn't even talk about the fact that we have an administration that sent guns to drug lords who used them against U.S. citizens and hundreds of Mexicans, that led to a government official in Mexico to say this should be considered an act of war by the U.S. against Mexico.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of
with
people
Fast and Furious. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Fast and Furious, and a lot of people are beginning to wonder if Benghazi wasn't actually another gun-running operation, because you had the ambassador just an hour before this attack took place in Benghazi meeting with the ambassador from Turkey. We know that a Turkish ship had run guns from Libya into the Syrian rebels, and Hillary Clinton was one of the big advocates for arming those Syrian rebels. So a lot of people are, theorizing that this may have actually been a gun-running operation.
Interesting. With different objectives in Fast and Furious, obviously.
Oh, yeah, definitely different objectives. But it could be criminal. I mean, if you think of Iran-Contra in the Reagan administration, this would be similar to that.
Yeah. It could be, of course, if Republicans didn't end up having much, problem with that, which they really didn't in retrospect. There was a lot of yak that took place and a lot of testimony and that type of thing. Nothing's going to happen with the Democrats. However, on some of this other stuff, I actually think there may be some steam. I think the media is waking up to the fact that this administration is potentially dangerous to them too.
Oh. Yeah, I think the media is finally waking up, and you're seeing the mainstream media that had ignored Benghazi. They had enabled Obama to get through the election without having to answer for Benghazi. And of course, they've enabled this president in so many ways. But finally, I think when the president goes after the Associated Press, the largest news gathering organization in the world, and he attacks them, and after all, the Associated Press has been very friendly to this president. For him to go after them, I think may have been his Waterloo, because he woke the media up, and as you've seen in the last few days, they're beginning to ask some pretty hard questions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about time. What do you think about what's happening in terms of the House Oversight Committee? I'm always belly aching about those guys. There was one time when Darrell Issa was kind of a hero to me, and now he's become a little more than a belly acher. He waits so late on so many things. He lets things drag on. He doesn't take further action, and it just, basically he looks like a whiner.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, I think the Republicans a lot of times just play into the hands of the administration that says, well, this is all political, they're politicizing this, and, they try to have these show trials or these show hearings, and all of the senators or congressmen, they get up and they make their pronouncements and they make their accusations, but they don't ever ask the real questions that they need to ask. And instead, they should be having Susan Rice in there and asking her, who gave you these talking points? They should have Hillary Clinton's assistant in there asking her, who told you to change those talking points? In order to get to the people who are really at the bottom of this, they need to ask the right questions, and they just haven't done it.
Yeah, no question about it. And it seems like this is what happens when you get an agenda. You want this agenda. You don't want a world in which Muslims are terrorists. Clearly, that's what this administration has wanted, a world where Muslims aren't terrorists. And what you end up doing is you try to make all the facts fit that so-called reality. And next thing you know, you've got the kind of pandemonium that's taking place now.
Oh, yeah. And what they really need to do is kind of bear down on the real issues at hand here. You saw yesterday Eric Holder. He was up getting questioned, and he never answered a question. So why were they even talking to Eric Holder? If he wasn't the guy who was involved in the Associated Press investigation, why didn't they have the assistant that he claims that he handed this off to, who could answer questions? So, I think a lot of it's for show, because they wanted to have Eric Holder up there so they could grill him and make him look stupid. But what they should have done was had the actual person involved subpoenaed.
Yeah.
And ask him, well, what happened? How did this take place?
Yeah.
But again, they got no answers. They got some I guess, some good TV out of it. But other than that, we don't know any more today than we knew yesterday.
All right. His name again is Tony Powers. Love having him on this program. He does a fantastic job. And time always goes incredibly fast. I think I'm going to be on your program later. Looking forward to that. ITalkUSA.cp. Thanks as always for doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right. I want everyone to check that out. Always check out Tony. You're crazy if you're not. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to The Price of Business here on Business Talk 1110 AM.